Hello again, I am Blunty. 10 weeks ago, I popped up a video about SteamOS's quiet war on Windows that is about to get a little louder. Well, that promised loudness is building to a crescendo even as you listen to me. But since then, I've kept popping in and out of gaming on a thrown-together spare parts rig I built to revisit the state of gaming under Linux and a SteamOS-like environment. Now I'm ready to report to you what gaming is like under SteamOS. And I mean what it's actually like for a normal, regular gamer who doesn't want to fiddle with shit. And what gaming on SteamOS is actually like when you're not tied to the limitations of a little low-power handheld Steam Deck. That said, my test rig is not what you'd call a high-end rig either, with a once epic but now humble Ryzen 7 2700X paired with a RX 5700 XT GPU. So, not king of the hill, but it is reasonably representative of a mid to low-end kind of 1080p targeting gaming PC running under today's standards. Certainly good enough for my purposes of getting a feel for how easy, or indeed fiddly, gaming is under Linux these days. It's been about 4 or 5 years since I last dug into this situation, and yeah, things have changed. Things have changed a lot. And I do mean for the better, and they're about to change even faster, because very soon now, the very first third-party PC gaming handheld to officially support Valve's Linux-based SteamOS, the operating system that powers the Steam Deck, will hit shelves. It's the Lenovo Legion Go S. It's already on pre-order at several retailers, and we're about 8 weeks from launch. Ahead of that launch, the latest update to SteamOS, which dropped a few days ago itself, has started creeping towards this promised future of spreading to more already existing and future PC gaming handhelds, like the ROG Ally that I already have, which has specifically been promised official SteamOS support already. But also a more generalized future where SteamOS becomes a legitimate choice for many rigs, including desktops, no doubt both pre-built and custom. They're just kind of taking baby steps, first their own handheld, then third-party handhelds, and on from there. Not doing too much too quickly, in case they accidentally burn it all to the ground. For my tests, I've been using a Linux distribution called Bazzite. It has been very specifically designed to extremely closely mimic the SteamOS experience, even right down to including pre-installs for the same in-game overlay for performance monitoring. The UI is near identical right down to the slide-out side panels for various quick settings and whatnot. It's compatible with the same plugins for those side panels and such. And while I can and will actually highly recommend Bazzite as an experience, I mean, everything from install to, the end experience has been very, very smooth and issue-free, my end goal was simply to test the waters of how deeply I want to dive in when a more broad release of SteamOS becomes practical. Because again, as I detailed in that original video and mentioned a bit earlier, one of the massive benefits of SteamOS is the fact that it'll be a unified thing, consistent across the board, and is supported by a major brand who have been around for decades. They specialize in gamer needs, they are trusted by gamers, and they won't just plop out of existence or start failing to be properly updated like oh so many other Linux distros from, the you've never heard of themville. I don't know who makes Bazzite. I don't know how dedicated they are. I don't know what the size of the team is. I don't know, the update schedule or how long of life this thing is supposed to have. It could stop being supported next year for all I know. But with Valve, that's a very different issue of trust. Consumer confidence and trust is the key to SteamOS and Linux gaming becoming really a properly practical and popular choice for PC gamers over dealing with the monopoly hellscape and misery of Windows. And SteamOS is how that happens. It's the only way that's going to happen, in my mind. So, let's talk about the successes and indeed the problems. While most everything I did and played went just bloody seamlessly, like really smoothly, frankly, just install, press play, have fun, couldn't be simpler. No extra fiddling, no fussing with, you have to download this special Linux plugin to get that bit to work, or, you have to alter the version of the translation layer in Wine and Proton and the thing of this, and you got to use this specific version of that, otherwise it crashes at the menu every time. No, none of that anymore. That kind of crap used to be extremely common to hear from Steam Deck users and Linux gamers. Basically, every new game that launched, you have to go to the forum, and the forum go, okay, yeah, it doesn't work by default, but if you change this setting and change this setting, it should work fine. And that is still somewhat true for brand new releases, but it's getting better all the time. But I tested, well, practically speaking, a decade's worth of gaming, and almost everything Steam native simply worked right away. No fuss, no fiddling, simple. But there were some exceptions. No Man's Sky is a funny little one, because Bazite is made to so closely masquerade itself as SteamOS. When I installed No Man's Sky, it thought it was on a Steam Deck, like the actual Steam Deck hardware, and thinking that, it pre-installed a pre-compiled shader and locked itself to a bunch of pre-made settings, appropriate for the Steam Deck, and most infuriatingly, a Steam Deck native resolution and aspect ratio. And no matter what I did to the in-game menus, it refused to run at anything but that fucking Steam Deck aspect ratio, that stupid 16:10 laptop ratio, hence the bloody pillar boxing in the recorded gameplay on screen here. And nothing I tried, and I spent 2 hours fucking with this, nothing I tried would unlock the goddamn game settings properly. I couldn't even get the aspect ratio to work, for crying out loud. It was infuriating how little control I had over my own fucking game. So much for Linux being user customizable, eh? Yeah, not so much. After this particular frustration made me rage quit even trying any further testing on that machine for that day, I did come back the next day and did a bunch of internet searches and jumped through a few hoops and fiddled with some low-lying settings and eventually got it to respect the options and settings that I chose for the game. So yeah, it was a hell of a fuss and quite an annoyance, but eventually I did get it to behave itself. Also used No Man's Sky here to test the relatively new Steam function of the background recording stuff, just to make sure that worked, especially on this sort of lower end hardware and on Linux and stuff, and it works perfectly, just like it does on the Steam Deck and just like it does on Steam on Windows. Absolutely transparently, it works perfectly. You can squirt the file straight across to your phone and do whatever you want with it from there and stuff, and yeah, it just works. But getting the game to behave itself, it was I got big mad. Very frustrating. Well, in the end, at the end of the day, when SteamOS does start appearing on more devices officially and otherwise, this issue will be solved. The only reason it really did this is because right now the Steam Deck is the only place a game expects to find SteamOS, or something identifying as SteamOS in this case. But once SteamOS is out on multiple hardware choices, this kind of enforced preset and whatnot won't be a thing. I doubt No Man's Sky is the only victim of this particular kind of malarkey, but it was at least the only time I hit it in my own testing across the various games I was testing with. Everything else here you've seen so far, at least, in the background gameplay and whatnot, has simply worked perfect and correct from the very first startup after installing. But then there's things like Jedi Fallen Order, which I do own as a Steam native game, but it is also an EA published game, isn't it? Which means it also wants to launch the fucking EA app underneath everything. And the SteamOS front end is not made for that shit to happen. It wants to launch one thing at a time. So that meant the game wouldn't even start properly, because every time I started the game, it tried to launch the EA launcher, and it did so underneath the game, and it wouldn't let the game start properly. The solution is to pop into desktop mode, which in both SteamOS and Bazite is indeed very fast and easy. And the desktop mode is very, very sort of Windows-like. It won't take you very long to get used to it. If all you know is Windows, you'll get the hang of this really quickly. But once there, with proper multi-app window supports and whatnot, the EA app will launch properly, and you can then sign in and set it up all properly. But for some reason I never figured out, despite signing in correctly, and it recognizing my account and everything, the sidebar always still insisted there was a connection error, and it refused to allow my save games to sync from the cloud. Which, because it's a fucking EA, the nightmare house of misery and unlubed dildos, you have to sync your saved games using EA's app, not Steam's own simple and seamless built-in cloud save feature that pretty much every other modern fucking game on Steam uses. But no, not EA, because fuck you! So, bit of fuss there getting the game running, and if you're flipping between, say, a desktop gaming rig and a handheld, if one or indeed both machines are on SteamOS, or some other Linux variant for that matter, fuck you! You can't bring your saves with you because EA. Outside of that extreme annoyance, it ran shockingly well, even on this level of hardware. I really wish my cloud save had worked so I could take you to some of the more performance-intensive parts of the game. That was the original plan, which is why I was so annoyed that the cloud save didn't work, but whatever. But I think the game has had some performance patches since I last played at launch, because it used to be much more of a bitch to run. It shocked me how well it ran on this, actually. So then here comes the obvious question, what about games that are not on Steam? Well, that's a surprisingly easy thing these days too. There's an app called Lutris that you can run in desktop mode, which I first ran across half a decade ago when I last fiddled with Linux gaming, but it's come a long way since then. It's way better than it used to be. It's basically a game manager, but it also lets you quite easily install other Windows-only front ends, like Ubisoft Connect, which let me play Star Wars Outlaws, which I got as a content creator code at launch, which means I didn't get to choose which storefront I got it on. I had to have it on Ubisoft's own storefront. First world problems. But I had a similar issue with syncing save files as I did with the EA app. This really is something that needs to be addressed. I'm sure there's probably some hoop jumping workaround for it, but again, let me remind you, I'm considering this experience for the average user here who just wants to play their damn games. They're not big tickets. They don't want to dig into their fucking file systems and shit and install more third-party apps to get around these limitations. They just want to start the game and play the game. So, while installing third-party launchers was not any harder, practically speaking, than Windows, so long as you know about the existence of Lutris, the fact that things like cloud saves just don't work in at least 2 major publishers' apps is a big fucking problem. But once more, those issues aside, the game itself actually ran great. Smooth, clean, performance perfectly in line, if not slightly better than I had expected from this aging hardware. No weird issues, no crashing, no performance hitching, just proper game doing proper game stuff. Lutris can also act as a front end for the Epic Games Store using a launcher called Heroic. That's how I first found Lutris, as a matter of fact. That half-decade ago, the last time I fiddled around with this stuff. I wanted to test some Epic games. But you can mash that right alongside GOG games now just as easily and have them both sit in one launcher browser. Nice and convenient. And so here comes Cyberpunk from GOG. And this time there were no issues with syncing my saved games. GOG's annoying red launcher was perfectly happy to slurp those right down easy peasy. But it was not all sunshine and roses with the red launcher. Please, publishers, stop using your own fucking launchers. Just use Steam. Nobody likes these separate launchers. We all hate them, and they just cause issues. So, Red Launcher. When it came to adding Cyberpunk to Steam as a non-Steam game so I could launch it from the normal SteamOS front end, the big picture mode style thing, I hit some issues. No matter what I did, using the automatic add option or manually adding it, including the game exe directly in Steam or the Red Launcher passed through, and no combination of launch time arguments supposedly there to stop the launcher running or running in a silent mode would let the game launch from Steam's front end. The very best I could get was Steam's logo just cycling there, looking like it's loading the game, and then the game's audio would play in the background. So the game was running, but SteamOS wouldn't show it to me, because for some reason the Red Launcher was getting in the way somehow. I don't know exactly what's going on. I never did figure it out. When looking for solutions to this, I found it was a very widely known issue and has been for quite some time, and it has never been fixed. And there are no solutions that seem to work for everybody. Some people said, hey, try this, oh, it worked for me, but nope, didn't work for me. So, all of the Cyberpunk gameplay you're seeing here is the game launched in desktop mode, which is why there's no performance overlay for this one, and only this one game, because that only works under SteamOS's front end for some reason. And yes, I know there's probably a workaround for that too, or an alternative performance monitor or something, but do I have to repeat myself? Now, speaking of performance, by the way, I did indeed try the newest monstrously, notoriously piggy AAA game on the block, Monster Hunter Wilds. And while the performance was okay on this aging hardware, I found a balance of settings that sat well in a reasonable enough and playable state. I did have some very strange issues with the UI. The item bar there, for example, that's not what it's supposed to look like. That's all wrong. And what the hell is up with that end of hunt image? What is going on there? Something really weird is going on with the 2D UI layer of these graphics. Some weird scaling mismatch or something, I'd hazard a guess. But while it was sometimes a bit distracting to have these UI elements a bit clowned up, it didn't actually impact usability in any serious way. It didn't stop me using the UIs or recognizing what they were supposed to be doing and stuff like that. And the game still played fine. Odd thing though. It's the kind of visual bug I don't think I've seen in possibly decades. It's almost nostalgic. So, with some edge cases and issues that range from slightly inconvenient to flat out annoying, end of day, every single game I tried to run did run basically flawlessly, issues with their launchers aside. But issues like I had with Cyberpunk being unable to launch except in desktop mode because of its launcher, or EA's and Ubisoft launchers fucking with the ability to sync cloud saves, are still pretty goddamn big issues that need to be solved before this is ready for the average person. Especially as SteamOS is currently a handheld-focused experience. They've got their own Steam Deck, there's the Lenovo one coming along, there's getting a version for the ROG Ally, and being handheld-focused means a lot of people will be using this as a secondary or supplementary device in addition to their desktop gaming, and those people will want their goddamn cloud saves working at the very least. So, is SteamOS a full and proper replacement for Windows for the average gamer? Nope. Just no. No, it's not. Not yet. It's getting closer. No, still not there. But for even the mildly tech-savvy PC gamer who is just properly fed up with Windows' ever-growing pain in the arsery, yeah, it's probably ready for you. Like I said, the issues that I hit, there are probably workarounds I could have spent more time fiddling with, but that wasn't really the focus of what I was trying to do here. It was bad enough I burned 2 fucking hours trying to get No Man's Sky just to run in the proper aspect ratio. Oh, I was so mad that day. You have no idea. So full of... just salty. Just epic salty that day. Oh, and for those of you who love your, competitive online multiplayer shooters and shit like that, it's not for you. It's probably never gonna be for you, actually, because the anti-cheat crap that they use on those is still a massive issue under Linux. And some publishers have absolutely no intent of ever fixing that. They're not even trying, because they consider Linux too much under user-owned control. So they can't properly use their malware-like kernel-level anti-cheat shit like they want to and like they do on Windows. They don't want to make that work on Linux because it's too easy to make it not work on Linux, and that's causing a cheating problem in their eyes. And let's all pretend that there isn't already a massive cheating option on Windows gaming when it comes to those multiplayer online competitive shooters and such. Yeah, let's just imagine that's not a thing. Yeah, it's Linux is a problem. Sure. Fuck you. But yeah, me personally, how am I feeling about this? I'm absolutely 100% going to be setting up my ROG Ally handheld into a dual boot arrangement when SteamOS is officially supported there. And I will only ever use Windows from then on in on that device when I absolutely am forced to. Because I really like that device, but its own custom front end, or if you have to use Windows on it, it's just not a good experience, and SteamOS is a much, much more pleasant experience on that kind of device. So the only time I'm ever going to use Windows on that thing ever again once SteamOS arrives for it is when I'm absolutely forced to, for compatibility or whatever reasons, or I just need to switch over to Windows for testing, for videos and shit, edge case content creator crap. My day-to-day on there, though, will switch to SteamOS, no question. It is quite a nice experience, and I'm so glad to be rid of Windows and all the pain-arsery that comes with Windows and Microsoft crappery. And I'd heavily consider doing the same on my main rig too, but there is some extra shit I need to worry about first. Content creator stuff mostly, which means it's even harder to leave Windows in the trash where it belongs. It's also worth noting that the Windows Store, games you get on the Windows Store and Xbox Live stuff, of course, that just doesn't work on Linux at all at this point. But most of us only use that stuff when we absolutely have to anyway, so how much of that is an issue for you? Well, that's a you thing as well. Like I said, I can't practically completely abandon Windows just because of the nature of how I use it and what I do with it and what I use it for and stuff as a content creator. But dual booting and maining Steam every time I can, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh well, baby steps, I guess. Baby steps. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty. I'll catch you next time. Thank you as always to the patrons.